around him. And it's not that he was throwing fits and kicking over C-stands and, throwing boxes around or anything.
Ron Howard, America's favorite director.
And so I'm living that dream, and it's wonderful.
The red-headed kid from the Andy Griffith Show grew up to live that dream, transforming into one of Hollywood's most respected and enduring storytellers.
She sees Chai, and maybe she just gets, and it's just so emotional.
For over 5 decades, Howard has carried the reputation of being the industry's nice guy. A steady hand. A collaborator who consistently brings out the best in those around him. But behind the warm smile and the famously calm demeanor lies another story, because even the nicest man in Hollywood has his limits. Ron Howard doesn't shout. He doesn't slam doors or storm off sets. His style of leadership is measured, thoughtful, and rooted in respect. He has always believed that great performances come from actors who arrive with talent, humility, and professionalism. Which is precisely why certain collaborations tested him in ways that no one could have expected. For Howard, these experiences weren't just challenges. In his own carefully chosen words, they were educational. From his early years as Opie on The Andy Griffith Show to his stewardship of blockbuster productions, Howard encountered performers who pushed every ounce of his legendary patience. Some brought chaos into his meticulously managed sets. Others confused ego for artistry. A few simply failed to meet the standards of professionalism he quietly demanded. These weren't ordinary creative disagreements. They were deeper clashes, tensions that lingered long after the cameras stopped rolling, influencing Howard's casting decisions for years. And so, tonight, we uncover the truth behind those silent resentments, the behind-the-scenes conflicts that reveal even Hollywood's most patient director has a breaking point. These are the 7 actors Ron Howard reportedly couldn't stand. Number 1. Tom Sizemore. Ron Howard never rules through fear. His leadership is calm, deliberate, rooted in preparation and mutual respect.
He was an entertainer first. He was a monologuist, and he was a singer, and he never was really a stand-up comedian per se. He was a humorist.
He believes great performances require not just talent, but discipline and restraint. Which is why his encounters with Seismore, an actor of undeniable ability but notorious volatility, pushed Howard into one of his most difficult balancing acts as a director. Working with Tom Sizemore wasn't just difficult, it was, in Howard's own words, a lesson in containment. In 1996, Howard was at the helm of Ransom, a high-stakes thriller with all the right ingredients. Mel Gibson and Rene Russo leading an A-list cast, strong studio backing, and Howard's steady, disciplined direction. On paper, the production was set for success. Then came Tom Sizemore. Cast as one of the film's antagonists, he was a perfect fit in theory. Gritty, intense, and commanding. But behind the camera, his presence was volatile. By then, Sizemore's reputation preceded him, unpredictable off-screen, magnetic but unstable on it. According to industry sources, he often arrived late, disoriented, and off-balance. Retakes piled up not because he forgot lines, but because his erratic energy derailed the rhythm of entire scenes. For Howard, whose sets are known for calm precision and family-like cooperation, managing Sizemore was like containing a storm. In a rare candid reflection years later, Howard admitted, "There were days I had to recalibrate everything around one person's unpredictability. That's not how I like to work. It disrupts trust and throws off the rhythm." The breaking point came during a pivotal sequence when Sizemore's behavior grew so chaotic that Howard was forced to stop production altogether. Crew members recalled the moment vividly, not an explosion of anger, but the quiet resolve of a director determined to protect his set, even if it meant pushing back against one of his most combustible performers. When Tom Sizemore passed away in 2023, Ron Howard offered no statement, no tribute. Sometimes, even for Hollywood's nicest director, forgiveness has its limits. Number 2. Shelley Long. Ron Howard has always believed in balance. As a director, he thrives on collaboration, an orchestrator who builds harmony first and foremost.
First and foremost, and to this day, if you get him up in front of an audience, he's pretty entertaining.
His sets are famous for their calm, steady focus, where actors feel safe to explore because they know their director is listening, adapting, and guiding with patience. But in 1982, that philosophy was tested. The project was Night Shift, Howard's first big studio film, a quirky comedy starring Henry Winkler and a breakout Michael Keaton. For the young director, barely in his 20s, the stakes couldn't have been higher. Everything needed to run smoothly. Enter Shelley Long. At the time, she was fresh from television success. Not yet the household name Cheers would make her. On paper, she was perfect for the role. Smart, witty, and capable of mixing charm with bite. But almost immediately, friction surfaced. Crew members later recalled her approach as overly controlling and meticulously calculated. Where Michael Keaton thrived on improvisation, energizing the set with spontaneity, Long demanded structure, insisting on precision for every single take. For Howard, the contrast was stark. Instead of the harmony he worked so hard to build, he found himself constantly negotiating Long's demands, balancing her rigid control with the freedom his other actors needed to shine. It was his first real test as a director, and one that left a lasting impression on how he would handle strong personalities for the rest of his career. Shelley Long's clashes with Howard went beyond minor disagreements. She questioned blocking, challenged rewrites, and turned nearly every scene into a debate over tone and motivation. In a 2006 interview, Howard reflected diplomatically on such experiences. Some actors come to set with their mind made up, leaving no room for discovery. That's difficult when you're trying to capture something magical in the moment. The breaking point came during a pivotal scene when Long reportedly delayed production for hours, demanding script changes. Crew members recalled Howard's visible frustration. He never raised his voice, but it was clear. He was quietly figuring out how to work around her, not with her. To Long, however, her approach was professionalism. In a 1995 interview, she defended herself, "I come prepared. I always do." Some directors mistake questions for challenges. For her, Howard's relaxed style felt unserious, even unprofessional. The lesson for Ron Howard was lasting. He valued collaboration over control, and Shelley Long embodied everything he hoped to avoid on future sets. Number 3. Andy Griffith. Ron Howard's legacy in Hollywood is defined by kindness and respect.
I don't know if he ever studied acting anywhere or not, but he really built his own sense, his own aesthetic.
He doesn't throw tantrums, he doesn't burn bridges. But behind that reputation lies a more complicated story, one rooted in his earliest days in Mayberry, where the man who played America's favorite sheriff wasn't always so fatherly once the cameras stopped rolling. At just 6 years old, Ron Howard stepped onto the Andy Griffith Show set wide-eyed and eager, cast as Opie Taylor, the sheriff's son. To millions of Americans, he was the red-headed sweetheart of Mayberry. And to young Ron, Andy Griffith initially felt like the perfect mentor. "Andy made me feel like I belonged," Howard reflected in a 1982 interview. "He never treated me like a prop. He treated me like a partner." But as Howard grew older, he also grew more aware of the man behind the character. The wholesome warmth of Mayberry often concealed a far more complex reality. By the later seasons, Griffith's mood had shifted. Scripts tightened, tension thickened, and cast members noticed his increasing irritability. Biographies have since described Griffith as controlling and quick-tempered, particularly as the burden of leading the show mounted. Frances Bavier, who played Aunt Bee, openly disliked him. Don Knotts loved him but admitted he feared his unpredictable temper. And young Ron Howard learned to read the room carefully, navigating the set with quiet caution. The breaking point came during the final seasons. By then a teenager, Howard began asking more questions about his character and the show's direction. Instead of encouragement, he was met with flashes of Griffith's darker side. A reality check that shattered the illusion of Mayberry's endlessly patient sheriff. Griffith reportedly didn't appreciate challenges to his authority, even from his fictional son. "You learn early how to navigate dominant personalities," Howard reflected in a 1999 interview, "especially when someone can turn on charm for a take, then shut it down completely between scenes." The subtext was clear. After the Andy Griffith Show ended, Howard and Griffith rarely spoke. They never collaborated again, seldom appeared together in public, and maintained only the most minimal professional connection. When Griffith passed in 2012, Howard's tribute was brief, carefully worded, and notably restrained. The experience taught Howard a lesson that would shape his entire directing philosophy. The warmth audiences saw on screen should exist off-screen too. On his sets, consistency mattered. The kindness and respect his cast and crew felt had to be as real as the stories they were telling. Number 4. Henry Winkler. In the warm glow of 1970s television, Happy Days seemed like the perfect slice of nostalgic Americana.
The entire time that I was under contract and doing Happy Days, my dream was to be a filmmaker.
For audiences, it was all smiles, laughter, and friendship. For Ron Howard, however, life behind the cameras told a more complicated story. Cast as clean-cut Richie Cunningham, Howard was supposed to be the show's anchor. But when Henry Winkler's Fonzie exploded into a cultural phenomenon, the balance shifted. The sidekick became the star, and the spotlight Howard once held began to dim. Industry insiders whispered about the tension. Howard had long dreamed of becoming a filmmaker, and to him, Happy Days was a stepping stone. Winkler, meanwhile, embraced his breakout stardom, and his growing influence on the show's direction left Howard quietly sidelined. As one writer later put it, Happy Days was sold as Richie's story. But America wanted the Fonz. And that didn't sit well with Ron. When Happy Days premiered in 1974, Ron Howard was the heart of the show, the clean-cut everyman audiences recognized from his years as Opie Taylor. But it didn't take long for Henry Winkler's Arthur, Fonzie, Fonzarelli to steal the spotlight. Originally written as a supporting role, the leather-jacketed rebel became a cultural phenomenon almost overnight. As Fonzie's popularity skyrocketed, the balance of power on set shifted. Scripts were rewritten to center his character, promotional campaigns placed him front and center, and executives leaned into the rebel's rising fame. What began as Richie Cunningham's story gradually morphed into the Fonzie show in all but name. Industry sources at the time noted Howard's visible frustration. He had been cast as the series anchor, only to find himself sidelined on his own show. One crew member later described the situation bluntly, "The irony was sharp. The wholesome hero got overshadowed by the rebel." Howard himself has always spoken carefully about the subject, never lashing out but never denying the tension either. In a reflective 2023 interview, he admitted, "When a character becomes that iconic, the dynamic changes. Adjustments have to be made." In one of his rare candid remarks from the 1990s, Howard went further, "There were times I questioned my place on the show. I didn't resent Henry personally, but I definitely resented how the narrative shifted around me." For Ron Howard, Happy Days wasn't just a sitcom. It was a lesson in stardom, the hard reality that television can change course in an instant, and even the lead actor can lose his center stage. By the early 2000s, Ron Howard had built his reputation as one of Hollywood's most reliable directors. Steady, professional, and trusted to handle big productions with calm precision. So when the opportunity came to direct Mel Gibson in Ransom, the pairing looked like a natural fit. Two consummate professionals uniting for a high-stakes thriller. But what seemed ideal on paper quickly became a test of patience and control. In 1996, Gibson stood at the very top of Hollywood. Fresh off his double Oscar wins for Braveheart, he was both a star and a celebrated director, wielding enormous influence. His intensity, so electrifying on screen, proved far more difficult to manage behind the camera. Industry insiders recalled how Gibson demanded script revisions, challenged Howard's direction, and often acted as though he were co-directing the film. Mel had strong opinions about everything, one crew member later revealed. Camera angles, line delivery, even catering. Ron spent as much time navigating Mel's input as he did directing the actual movie. The breaking point came during a key kidnapping sequence when Gibson repeatedly halted filming to pitch alternative ideas. What should have been a tightly executed scene unraveled into hours of stop-and-start frustration. Howard, known for his calm authority, never lost control, but the strain was obvious. In later interviews, he chose his words carefully. Some actors bring so much passion to their work that it spills into every corner of production. That can be energizing, but it can also be exhausting. The experience left Howard with a clear lesson. Passion is valuable, but trust is essential. And when the star of the film insists on reshaping the director's vision, collaboration becomes a battle rather than a partnership. Number 5. Russell Crowe. Ron Howard has always been the calm center of his productions, the rock on which everything rests. His sets are disciplined, professional, and comfortable, guided by his patience and his quiet authority.
He was really the rock on which the show was built, in every way.
Which is exactly why his collaboration with Russell Crowe on A Beautiful Mind left such a lasting mark. On paper, it was a dream pairing. Howard's steady direction combined with Crowe's electrifying presence seemed destined for Oscar glory. And indeed, the film went on to win Best Picture. But behind the scenes, Howard faced a storm of intensity unlike anything he had managed before. Crowe's performance as John Nash remains one of his most celebrated. Yet for Howard, the process was less about acclaim and more about navigating a mercurial genius whose passion and volatility tested even his legendary patience. Insiders described Crowe arriving on set each day as if he were preparing for battle, not against his fellow actors, but against the filmmaking process itself. He challenged rewrites, scrutinized camera angles, and turned every note from Howard into a philosophical standoff. What should have been a smooth production often became a series of negotiations. Russell was brilliant, one assistant director recalled, but he made everything harder than it needed to be. Ron had to manage his fire just to keep the film moving. Howard, ever professional, later admitted to The Hollywood Reporter, "With some actors, you guide the scene. With Russell, you hold on tight and hope for the best." The tension wasn't driven by ego, but by process. Crowe saw Howard's collaborative approach as a threat to the raw authenticity he demanded. In 2004, he explained his method without apology: "I don't show up to be liked. I show up to find truth in every moment. If that causes friction, so be it." When asked directly about Howard, Crowe's words felt like faint praise. "Ron's a thoughtful director, but sometimes I think he wants everything too clean, too safe. Real art isn't safe." The film became a triumph, winning Oscars and securing its place in cinematic history. But for Howard, the personal toll was clear. He never cast Crowe in another lead role. No cameos, no follow-ups. When pressed in 2015 about a possible reunion, Howard's answer was firm yet diplomatic: "Some collaborations are meant to be once in a lifetime." The masterpiece stood, but the partnership ended. Proof that even for Hollywood's nicest director, some creative costs are too high. Number 6. Marlon Brando. In 1995, Ron Howard was handed what looked like the opportunity every director dreams of: the chance to direct Marlon Brando.
I've always felt that that's another thing that I really took away from the show, was a sense that, hey, it was, it could be a lot of fun.
The legendary method actor, the icon of A Streetcar Named Desire and The Godfather, was cinema royalty. For many, working with him would be a career-defining honor. For Howard, it became a harsh lesson in why some legends are best admired from afar. The project, a biographical drama about an aging patriarch wrestling with family legacy, had all the makings of award season gold. On paper, it was prestige. In practice, it unraveled into a nightmare. Insiders recalled Brando arriving on set unprepared, refusing to learn his lines, and insisting that dialogue be written on cue cards scattered across the set. But that was only the beginning. The real issue wasn't his eccentric methods, it was his disregard for everyone else's time. Brando would vanish for hours without explanation, delay entire productions by showing up late, and demand sweeping script changes on the spot. What for others would have been unthinkable became routine under his presence. For Ron Howard, a director who built his reputation on steady, respectful collaboration, the experience was suffocating. He found himself trapped in a production where one actor held the entire process hostage, treating the discipline of filmmaking as if it were beneath him. The result was clear: What should have been the crowning jewel of Howard's directing career instead became the moment he realized that even Hollywood's greatest talents can destroy a film when professionalism is left behind. Crew members remembered the chaos vividly. Marlon treated the set like his own playground, one insider recalled. He'd stop mid-scene, decide he wanted a new motivation, and everyone else just had to wait. The breaking point came during what should have been a routine dialogue exchange. Brando halted filming again and again, demanded rewrites on the spot, then vanished for 3 hours. When he finally returned, he announced he had completely reconceived the character and insisted they restart from scratch. Howard, always the picture of professionalism, did his best to accommodate Brando's whims while protecting the schedule. But behind the scenes, those close to the production said his frustration boiled over. The disrespect toward the cast, crew, and the process itself had crossed every line. After weeks of disorder, the project collapsed. Howard never publicly blamed Brando, but the truth was understood in Hollywood circles. Even the industry's most patient director had found his limit. Years later, when asked about working with iconic stars, Howard gave a measured but revealing response. Some legends earn their reputation through their work. Others earn it through their behavior. It's important to know the difference. From Brando's unchecked chaos to Mel Gibson's overwhelming dominance, from Russell Crowe's volatility to Henry Winkler's unexpected rivalry, and even the complicated lessons learned under Andy Griffith, Ron Howard's career is proof that even Hollywood's nicest director has faced battles behind the camera. Behind the image of Hollywood's nicest director lies a harder reality. Even the calmest, most patient leaders eventually reach their limits. For Ron Howard, those limits weren't about ego or grudges, they were about professionalism. These experiences shaped the filmmaker he became, a director who prizes collaboration over chaos, discipline over improvisation, and above all, respect for the craft and the people who bring it to life. His conflicts were never about personal animosity. They were about protecting an environment where everyone could do their best work. That was his standard, and not everyone could meet it. What do you think? Were Howard's expectations too high, or were these actors simply crossing the line of professionalism? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more untold stories of Hollywood's hidden conflicts and the true cost of perfection in the film industry.